Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle, and welcome to Chasing Legends. Welcome back to Chasing Legends. I'm Wayne Tuttle. I'll be your host yet again this week. Lucky you, lucky me. Please hit our subscribe button, hit the notifications bell, leave a comment if you want to leave a comment. Go to our About section, represent.com. You can order a t-shirt, Dutch Hunter Rendezvous, Legend of the Superstition Mountains, black, gray, long sleeve, short sleeve. Yes, this stuff runs through my head while I sleep. Moving into this week, we are in I believe it's the third week of January 2022. And coming up this Thursday at the Superstition Mountain Museum, Thursday at 1 p.m., I believe. You can check their website. But there will be a guest lecture. It will be myself. I will be talking about kind of the mythology, the folklore of the legends of the Superstition Mountains and the Lost Dutchman versus the fact. So that's the Superstition Mountain Museum. I will be there again the next Thursday. Go to the Superstition Mountain Museum website, and you'll get all the guest lectures and so forth. So this is week 2 coming up the 20th, and then we will be following through on that. So for anybody interested, they've been having very large crowds. Bring your own chairs, and it should be a really nice day out in the mid-70s out there. So hopefully I will represent well and do well on that. That being said and done, let's move forward. One thing I get a lot, and I know we did the discussion on books, and I wanted to cover several quick things here today, but one of the things I wanted to cover was, people always say, what's a good starter book? So it's a little different than telling someone to hunt down Sim Zeeley's Lost Dutchman Mine, or Barry Storm's Thunder God's Gold, Killer Mountains, Curse of the Dutchman's Gold by Helen Corbin, and I can usually, depending on what the person's interests are, I can offer different books. The number one book for someone starting out would be, for me, The Hiker's Guide to the Superstition Wilderness by Jack Carlson and Elizabeth Stewart. Excellent book. It's out of print now, I believe. But you can find copies. There are copies available out there. One of the reasons, and you can find them at used bookstores, is they reprinted them. And there was many editions, reprints of this book. But after they reprinted, they wanted to expand upon it. I've been on a number of hikes and been out there with Jack, saw how he did it. If you're a hiker, book's essential. It's going to tell you off trail, on trail, all different things. It's going to tell you where things are. So if you read it thoroughly, or even you take it along, I kept my copy of this, one of my copies, in my pack at all times, because there'd be things I'd want to reference on the trail, and Jack put these things in, so as you're walking the trail, you know at what mile marker and so forth to look for certain things. Mark cactuses, the Peralta stone, and things like that. Peralta stone's a stone that says Peralta on it, and there's several of them out there. So it's a very cool book to have. Jack and Elizabeth are great people. I believe these are self-published by them, but they're very, very popular. Well, they were so popular that Jack and Elizabeth decided they wanted to expand upon it, and you would think, how are you going to expand on this? You did something that covered all the trails and stuff. Well, they came up with 2 books. It's Superstition Wilderness Trails East and Superstition Wilderness Trails West. And as you can tell, they're probably thicker than the first book, each individual volume. And it's more comprehensive. It's just not even the West and the East. Jack spent a lot of time with Howard Hornick, I know, and a lot of different people, the Martin family. And he learned even where the springs, the water holes were, different things in the ranching history. So if you're interested in the Lost Dutchman Mine, these are excellent books because they'll have history tales, tell you where the camps were, different people, give you some background on things. But they also tell you about the ranchers and the ranching and the settlement of the different areas. They will tell you about some of the mysterious disappearances and deaths. So almost everything you could want to know in the superstitions in one form or another is kind of in the books. And one of the nice things about the book, going with my lecture, is he's just putting the facts and documentation in there and saying, well, there is a story of this. But he's not trying to give an opinion or speculation about anything in particular. So you get just straight the facts. I believe there's GPS and coordinates. I know he was taking those in. And Jack was wonderful. We were out doing a trail, and he would re-hike the trails. and try to always put things in. And I don't know if they always make the books, but one of the great things was he would sit there and you know, put in his GPS coordinates at some point and talk about it and the trail condition. So he was always updating, and that was one of the reasons for the update of the books. And they tell you about that stuff. If you ever pick up Thomas Glover's Golden Dream, you'll find that first hiking guide actually has references that reference into Thomas's book. So it was a really cool correlation between the two books about some different things and sites. But if you're just starting out, if you're looking to order some books, I believe the Trails East and West, brand new, are only about 16, 17 bucks a piece. And if you start with the West, you're going to want the East because you're going to want the collection. But they're great books, so you can't go wrong. Two really super nice people. If you ever get a chance, you're at the Rendezvous and they're there, they will always talk to you. They're gonna, if you have any familiarity with the wilderness, they'll always ask you about trips you've made and so forth. Jack's always looking for new things, but that man has covered about every square inch of the mountains that I can think of, time and time again. He's spent so much time in the mountains. Personally, I've been out there with him. I know Greg Davis. I know a number of different people, so I don't think anybody can say anything bad about Jack too. One of the nicest guys, and hikes like a mountain goat. So great guy. That's the book to pick up, okay? So it's not a Lost Dutchman book, but it's going to cover and give you the background, and it's going to give you material, and he's going to have the bibliography and the source materials you might want to go follow up with. So great guy. Love them to death, both of them, because Elizabeth's not always around and I'm as familiar with her, but Jack is just an awesome dude. So there you go. Second up, well, third up, because I talked about the museum thing. So the third thing up is a little story I'm going to talk about. This happened a number of years ago. We're down in Pinyon Camp, and this is probably in the late 70s. And there was a guy named Davies or Davis or something like that, and that was his last name, I was pretty sure. He was an old guy, one of your typical guys like Ed Piper, Al Morrow, get that in your head. Guy'd wear a ball cap, and you know, he's kind of a little stinky, but skinny as a rail. And he came down into camp. And he came in and asked what we were having, and I can't remember what we were having, stew or something, but he wasn't interested, but he asked, did we mind if he heated up his beans by the fire? Frank would be not in favor of this man planning meals. He pulled out a can of lima beans. We all kind of looked at it and thought, okay. And he heated up his lima beans. And for the next hour, and this is the only reason I remember this individual, and the story comes to mind. One, Frank's absolute hatred of anything beans. Secondarily, this gentleman's love of beans, because for the next hour he talked about beans. When he went in the mountains, that's what he pretty much ate. He felt he could sustain himself on beans. He liked pork in his beans, but he had pork and beans. But he liked kidney beans, he liked pinto beans, he liked lima beans. He liked every kind of bean, and he had cans of beans. And my question on this always was, man, that's a lot of weight to carry around. But he taught me a lesson that day, something I carried through later in life, was about, well, carry your own cans of beans. And when you get in, because it's heavy, on the way, find spots where you can stick them and store some stuff. So if something ever happens, you know there's certain caches where you could get to some water and some food. And of course, his best piece of advice was leave a can opener or something to open the cans. And over the years, I thought that is kind of a cool idea, because when you're going back into a similar certain area, stashing away a few supplies or a few things, in which a number of Dutch hunters have, and if people are very cool, they just leave it alone. But his point was always, occasionally he would come in and find a can of beans was missing, or a can of beans had been opened. But he said all he figured was some poor soul, some guy was starving or just didn't have enough to eat, and he was more than happy to oblige, and everything as long as they cleaned up. Now, I ran into him once or twice, but it was like I ran him in the parking lot at the Peralta Trailhead down in there. That was the only time I really saw him in the mountains. And I remember a number of years later, I asked someone about something, and they remembered who I was talking about, because I think I said, you know, that guy, Davy Davis, the guy that eats beans. And they were like, oh, yeah. And they were talking, and they said he had passed away. And I was kind of like, man, that's kind of a shame. He'd probably been in his 60s or so. So I thought, okay, well, you know, I didn't know if he'd passed away in the mountains. Didn't get any other information, just he'd passed away. The next year or two, I'm back in the mountains, and we're talking we're getting in the area of the mid-80s or so forth, 86 or 87. And I remember being back in the mountains, and I was walking down a trail, and here he comes, and he walks right by me. And he kind of paused and slowed down and gave me that squint eye, kind of like not wanting to make eye contact, but like something was familiar. Obviously, I'd grown a number of years. And then I turned around and said something stupid like, "Are you the guy that just eats beans?" Because I couldn't remember his name at the time. And he turned around and he said, and we started talking. And of course, I was a kid still. So I turned around and said something effective like, "Someone told me you're dead." And he just looked at himself and looked up and down. Said, "Then that means I'm a ghost." And then he turned around and he started walking and left. I never saw the man again. Was it the ghost of Davy Davis, the Bean Man, or not? I've never run into anybody else that knew him. So, and a lot of times in the mountains, guys might not have given their real name when they came in. And that was the only one time in camp is when I think I heard his name. So I could have his name way off, but definitely kind of one of those guys that you thought was something of a character. And those guys drift in and out. I know at the Rendezvous one year, there was a gentleman who drifted in and out of the dark, sat with Tom Collenborn for a while. They had a long chat, and then he drifted right back into the darkness. And Tom's only mention of him, not a name or nothing, was that, yeah, he's still living out in the mountains. So even today, there's the guys that they keep to themselves, keep on their own. They don't really want their names made public or who they are. I feel safe in this because it's been 40-some-odd years, so I have a feeling he's not around anymore. And if he is, we should all be shaking his hand and getting on the bean diet. And that being said, kind of moving forward from that, because it's tangibly connects into it. So I'm back in the mountains, and one of the things I would do, and Randy Wright and I did it, we would bury some water somewhere and some, a gallon here, a gallon there, and then occasionally I would go around and I would find a good spot that I knew was near somewhere I liked to camp. Now, being on my own, kind of a solo camper, I didn't need the same spot. I generally, as a rule, found really nice spots kind of out of the way because I was, one, bushwhacking, but two, it was just me. I didn't need a place to have a fire pit and set up a tent. So it was a very small area. And I'd find a nice alcove or someplace somewhere just off the beaten path. Sometimes hard to relocate, but then one of the things I would always look for is someplace I could stash some cans and a can opener and some water. So I was taking to it, making sure I was putting some water and some stuff back. Randy and I had a great idea once of getting a larger container, finding a way to get it back in, and find a base of operations area where we could fill up on the way in after we'd done a lot of our hard hiking, but get that thing filled up, and then later we could work off of it, and it would mean we would carry less weight. So we started burying water, and one of those amusing anecdotes is one time we ran out of water, and Randy spent probably a good hour digging everywhere, couldn't find the water. That was down at the juncture of coming up out of Barks Canyon up into Needle Canyon. So if someone ever runs in a couple gallons of water buried in there, that was Randy. Anyhow, I had a stash up on the north end of Bluff Springs Mountain, going out towards the Marsh Valley and on the way to Charlie Boy. And I'd stayed up in there, and I had a spot, and I had cans of chili and beans, and then I had a can opener, and then I had a couple jugs of water. And the idea was I didn't really have to bring food in for a long hiking like that, because I made a couple long hikes in, hauled just as much stuff as I could in order to set myself up later. So let's say I'm back in there and I don't want to, and back then the rage was eating the freeze-dried food and stuff, but I didn't want to haul as much water and stuff. But if I ran low on water or whatever happened, it was a warm day, I knew there was a place I could kind of hold up. And it served me well. I usually didn't really need anything from there, so anything I had coming out, I would just leave there and not just even resupply, but keep it up. And it was left alone for years. And then I came back one time, and almost all the cans were empty. The empty cans were laying there, and the water was gone. There was no note. I could tell someone had spent significant time there. I've never heard of anyone mentioning that story or whatever, but the damnedest thing is they stole my can opener. So when I came in that time, it was like the last of it. I was like, you know what? If people are going to be like this, I'm just going to clean the last of it out, and I'm just going to eat this then, because I don't really want to haul this stuff out. And they had taken my can opener. So the cans of beans and chili that were left, there was 3 or 4 of them, are still sitting there. And I did pour the water out because it kind of ticked me off. Is like, I can't believe he took my can opener, you know, of all things. So that's probably pretty much it, but those two stories do kind of dovetail. Pick up Jack Carlson and Elizabeth Stewart's hiking guides. I believe you can find these pretty much just about anywhere. I've seen them at Barnes & Noble. I think you can order them. You can find them on Amazon. You can find them at the Superstition Mountain Museum if you come out to watch me. You can find them over at Goldfield Ghost Town. I'm pretty sure they'd have copies or got something around. And like I said, you can just about look for them anywhere. They're probably the most easiest Dutch hunting book, Lost Dutchman Mine book to find. And like I said, hopefully Trevor will throw up a couple snapshots of them where you got a good look at them. But great reading material, great for the history, great for the hiking if you just like me, you just like walking around. If you're off trail, they're definitely good for that as well. They got the little topographic maps and they show you all the trail systems interconnect. Just great stuff. So pick up the book Jack Carlson, Elizabeth Stewart, The Hiking Guides in the Wilderness. Come out to the Superstition Mountain Museum and see me. I do not know if they record these things or anything's ever made available. I have no clue, but I will talk to them on that. Remember always to pack in and pack out what you got, but there's nothing wrong with storing something there. Just maybe today, just make sure it's pop-top stuff so they don't steal your can opener, because that kind of sucks. But all that said and done, thank you for everybody for watching these videos, taking your time week to week with us. I mean, I know it's been a couple hundred times coming from the lives into these and so forth. Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground in a lot of time, and there's a lot more to do. We've been back in the mountains. We're just there last week. We were planning on this weekend, and we're planning on it in the future. So all those people we see out there at the museum and other places, but definitely back in the mountains and the trails, thank you. When the guy in the blue pickup comes down Peralta Road or First Water Road, and he's saying, hey, do you guys need a ride back to your car? Just right on the tailgate, you don't have to worry. The guy's not a serial killer. It's me and Freddie. We're just trying to get you a ride back to your vehicle because, you know, sometimes when the parking lots are overfilled, you got that extra mile or so walk. We're just trying to save your legs and just be courteous about it. Anyways, thank you everybody for watching. Until the next time, I'm Wayne Tuttle. You're not, and this was Chasing Legends.